there, young boy. What day is it?
Why, it's PWI 500 Day.
Oh, excellent boy. Wonderful boy. Here's a shilling. Go and get a turkey from the shop and take it to Bob Cratchit's house.
No, I shan't, you mark. Hello, everybody.
It's PWI 500 Day.
Hey.
Every year, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated take a look at the wrestling landscape and give us the 500 best wrestlers in the world in order of greatness. And Jack, this is something that you've done pretty much every year for the last, since time immemorial of Cultaholic. And
yeah.
So I think this is a subject matter for you to really take the reins on. How does this PWI 500 compare to previous?
Well, it's an interesting one. First of all, it's important to mention that it might look a little bit funny given recent events in wrestling, but that's because the evaluation period runs from August 2023 to the end of July this year. So it doesn't run right up until the day of release for the magazine. There are a few months this year that don't count. So you need to bear that in mind. The other thing is that if you don't know, the PWI 500 isn't just a kayfabe list. It isn't just a shoot list of wrestlers and how great they are in terms of like you might see from like the Wrestling Observer Awards. It's kind of a weird blend of the two. So they take into account not only in storyline achievements, title wins, title reigns, that sort of thing, but they also factor in how good the wrestler's year has been. I've just put a bit of Jack's fun analysis
Jack's fun analysis.
And just from glancing at the top 10 this year, which we will mainly be focusing on the top 10 because that's what makes the big headlines, it feels as though this year it's maybe weighted even more heavily towards kayfabe achievements than usual. They do often stress that there's a balance between kayfabe and real world ability, but I think that the kayfabe side of it might be a little bit more important this year. One name in particular that we'll get to in the top 10 is kind of a big example of that.
Shall we go one by one all the way down?
Okay, then.
So Cody Rhodes to get us started. Cody Rhodes, number one in the PWI 500. He, in the time that they were recording this, the PWI 500, he finally finished the story and beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. Won his second consecutive Royal Rumble. Became part of the biggest storyline of recent history. Sort of a Daniel Bryan-esque fan response that led to The Rock being ousted from that one-on-one main event at Mania, and Cody Rhodes finishing his story against Roman Reigns. He's defended the title ever since against the likes of AJ Styles, numerous occasions on there, and briefly held the tag belts with Jey Uso as well. So a busy review period for Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, some of those title defenses after the AJ Styles feud did come after the end of the evaluation period, but as you say, it's kind of hard to argue against Cody being number one. He won the biggest belt in wrestling at the biggest show in wrestling and did so despite The Rock possibly trying to insert himself in there and win it instead. He's achieved a lot in kayfabe and a hell of a lot out of kayfabe as well. And whether or not Cody's your favorite style of wrestler or the sports entertainment style is what you personally enjoy or not, I don't think it can be argued just how molten hot and how over he was for pretty much the entirety of the evaluation period.
Number two.
Number two is Swerve Strickland. He had, at the back end of 2023, two big wins over Hangman Adam Page, which led to their feud, which is, as we speak, still very much ongoing. One of those wins came in that terrifying Texas death match, of course, and that really propelled him up the card. He wasn't a main eventer in AEW until, I think, really after that feud with Hangman had begun. He then obviously won the AEW World Championship from Samoa Joe at Dynasty, and then that became a strong title reign with defenses against the likes of Will Ospreay, a match that many people saw Ospreay as winning, against Christine Cage, against Claudio Castagnoli, against Roddy Strong. Both he's defended the belt on TV and on pay-per-view as well, and only lost the belt after the end of the evaluation period. So I think Swerve's a very strong number two pick. I don't really disagree with him.
Now, during this evaluation period, of course, both Cody Rhodes and Swerve Strickland were the world WWE champ, well, the champions of their respective brands. Cody WWE champion, Swerve AEW champion. And when you compare the two together, I think it's an easy enough thing to say that Cody was certainly represented more so as the WWE champion than I think Swerve was.
I think that's a fair
a lot
point.
of other things that got in the way that sort of took a lot of shine away from the great work that Swerve was doing on AEW, whereas Cody, whether it was in an opening match but with the Bloodline or in a main event match, which was an excellent wrestling match, it always felt like he was very much at the top of the tree.
He's the guy, whereas in
Yeah.
AEW they had multiple things going on. I would say in AEW's defense that by the end of Swerve's reign at Wembley Stadium, he had finally reached the top. He was finally the main program. It wasn't up for debate anymore. Unfortunately, he did then lose the belt, and that all came after the end of the evaluation period. So I think Cody at number 1 and Swerve at number 2, I think that's a fair order so far.
Now, you mentioned about how sort of kayfabe might be a bit more weighted and how, you know, some of the parameters are a little bit loose and fast in the PWI. Will Ospreay might be a contender for that. He's there at number 3 this year. He began the evaluation period still in New Japan. He reached the semifinals of the G1, beating Shingo Takagi at the Rev Pro Anniversary Show. He then beat Wembley Stadium, Chris Jericho the following night. He didn't beat Wembley Stadium.
He beat all of Wembley Stadium.
It's difficult because Wembley, as we know, doesn't have shoulders. But Chris Jericho does, and he beat Chris Jericho at Wembley Stadium after the Rev Pro Anniversary Show. He wrapped up with New Japan with some big title defenses, the US title against Zack Sabre Jr., Yota Tsuji, had a dream match against Marufuji and Noah, ended up losing his title at Wrestle Kingdom, and then lost to Michael Oku in one of probably the best Rev Pro matches I've ever seen, an epic.
It got a lot of critical acclaim. Dave Meltzer called it the best match in UK wrestling history, and that's just one man's opinion, but it shows kind of the critical acclaim that match got.
Cheers, Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks are crying.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Strong start to his AEW career, winning the international title from Roddy Strong and defending it against everybody and anybody. He did lose it to MJF just before the end of the evaluation period for the PWI 500, and obviously lost a big world title match to Swerve at Wrestle Dream as well, which is why I think when you base it on the parameters that they have very much used for the PWI, should Will have been that high?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Will kind of is flying in the face of my fun analysis from earlier on. I mentioned that there's one wrestler in the top 10 who kind of suggests that the kayfabe stuff is more important than the shoot stuff. Ospreay kind of flies against that a little bit because, as we can see there, he didn't hold a world title in any promotion during the evaluation period. He had a massive non-title match against Chris Jericho at Wembley, which he won. I guess that counts in his favour, kayfabe-wise. The match against Marufuji and Noah, the match against Shingo at Rev Pro, the match against Oku at Rev Pro. But the belts that he held were kind of upper mid-card belts, weren't they? The New Japan United States title, the international title in AEW, which I think he did do work in elevating himself. But if we're going from the parameters we've just described the other two by, I think I agree with you. I think it's maybe a little bit strange to see Ospreay at number 3, and I would suggest that in this instance, maybe PWI bent their own rules slightly or were a little bit inconsistent because they thought he's just too good to deny. We have to put him higher.
Interesting choice, considering the past that these two have had online for number 4.
Yes, it's Seth freaking Rollins. He began the evaluation period as the World Heavyweight Champion in WWE, had successful title defenses against the likes of Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso. He was really hammered home as like the workhorse champion, especially with Roman being absent for so much of the back end of 2023. He was also part of Cody's winning team at War Games, but then CM Punk came back and stole his thunder. He was a key part of Cody's build to the WWE title win at WrestleMania, of course, and wrestled twice at WrestleMania himself, but lost both matches. First, the main event tag match on night 1 to The Rock and Roman Reigns, and then lost his belt on night 2 to Drew McIntyre. He's only wrestled once since then, actually, taking some much needed time off, I think, to let his body recover. Unsuccessfully challenging for the World Heavyweight title at Money in the Bank. He also acted as special guest referee for the first Punk versus Drew match at SummerSlam, but I don't know why I've put that in because that came after the end of the evaluation period.
I feel like a lot of Seth Rollins' work to get to this position in the PWI 500 was in that second half of 2023, where he he worked his buttocks off on every show and any show as the world champion. Getting injured in January sort of slowed down that in-ring momentum, because obviously he had that match where he got injured against Jinder Mahal.
Yes.
It meant that he missed out wrestling at the Rumble. He missed out wrestling at the Elimination Chamber. Got the tag match and the world title match at Mania, then disappeared for a while after that. Very much healing up from what was a very heavy on his body few years before that. But the stuff that he did end of 2023 was so strong that it's propelled him this high up the list, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. At first, when I saw Rollins this high, I was thinking, oh, that is a bit high. But obviously, you remember the more recent stuff more imminently in your memory, don't you? Whereas the back end of 2023, it's easy to forget just how much of a it's a cliche, but a workhorse Seth Rollins was.
Number 5 is Tetsuya Naito.
Right.
He won the 2023 G1 Climax, subsequently defeated former stablemate Sanada to win the IWGP title at Wrestle Kingdom in January. He had successful defenses against stablemate Tsuji, rematch against Sanada, dropped the title to Moxley in Chicago at Windy City Riot, got it back from Moxley at Forbidden Door, and then had some mixed results at the beginning of the 2024 G1 Climax. Ultimately, he wouldn't even reach the semi-finals, although that came after the end of the evaluation period, so we're not going to count it.
The G1 Climax kind of bridged the end of the evaluation period, but the first half of his G1 run did have mixed results.
But quite limited to tag action, mainly in that last quarter.
Yeah, Naito, as many people noticed for the first time who maybe don't keep up regularly with New Japan, in that match with Moxley at Forbidden Door, did look slower than usual, did look like his body had started to catch up with him. Given both his age, time catches up with everybody, but also the grueling New Japan style and schedule. It affects many New Japan wrestlers. It's never nice to see. You can see them sometimes physically pained even as they're walking to the ring sometimes, or slower than usual. And that certainly started to affect Tetsuya Naito. He is the one that I mentioned at the beginning of the video who kind of flies in the face of the PWI's mixed evaluation, because I think he is the big example that this year's top 10 was weighted more heavily on kayfabe achievements. I don't think Naito has been anybody's, it sounds harsh, but I don't think he's been anybody's wrestler of the year in 2023 or 2024 so far. He hasn't been having the caliber of matches that we maybe got used to him having in the 2010s. But in terms of kayfabe achievements, you know, he won the 2023 G1, he won the belt at Wrestle Kingdom. If this was all a big story with no real life stuff behind it, then yes, absolutely Naito could be justified being this high. But I do have to question it if PWI are going to say, oh, it's based on real life ability as well.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's one of them where you want to give the respect due to Naito, but is there somebody that would have probably fitted that 5 position a little better?
Maybe, yeah.
I think maybe so. 6, here's a guy that's really had a breakout 2023 and 2024. Damian Priest.
Yes, he spent most of the time from summer 2023 up to WrestleMania as the undisputed tag team champion alongside Finn Balor. They lost the belts, but then won them back really quickly from Cody and Jay. But then they lost the belts at WrestleMania in that multi-team ladder match where, you know, the belts were split. And they didn't win either of the belts back. He cashed in his Money in the Bank contract on night 2, though, of WrestleMania, becoming the World Heavyweight Champion and ruining Drew McIntyre's dreams, and then didn't lose that belt until after the end of the evaluation period. Unlike Rollins, though, his reign was kind of plagued with unwanted help during title defenses. That was, I think, the deliberate story they were pushing, but it maybe didn't help his standing as a world champion as well. He beat Jey Uso at Backlash thanks to his Judgment Day stablemate. He wasn't very happy with them for that. He beat Drew McIntyre in Scotland thanks to CM Punk, and he beat Rollins and a cashing in Drew at Money in the Bank, again thanks in part to CM Punk. So it's a weird one because that was very much deliberate. That was the story they wanted to tell, but it did cause people to go, is he a real world champion? Now, after the end of the evaluation period, now he's fully turned face and been kicked out of the group. I think people love him now, so it's funny how it works out.
He's one of those where the world title reign wasn't what made him, but what came after it is what started to build him. Like losing that belt has elevated him weirdly.
I would fully agree with that.
I think we might see something similar as well with Swerve, how we said about how Swerve's really reached the zenith of that world title run at Wembley, but we're about to see when he comes back, probably him take it to another level.
Yeah.
Even more so.
And I hope so as well, because I think Damien Priest obviously has a long way to go and to bounce back and everything as well, and I think that fully applies to Swerve too.
Number 7 is MJF.
Horrible guy. Really nasty.
In main event in Wembley, successfully defended the AEW World title against Adam Cole. Also won the ROH tag belt alongside Adam Cole on the pre-show. Big title defenses against the likes of Samoa Joe, Kenny Omega, and Jay White. Also defended the tag belt on his own in a handicap match with Adam Cole's sideline. They really kept that story on fire, despite the fact that the Ring of Honor tag champs were completely broken heading into the end of last year. Once he lost the belt to Samoa Joe at World's End, he was sidelined until June. Notable wins over Rush and Hechicero, and then a heel turn, dastardly heel turn, with the very fate of Daniel Garcia in his hands, that led to him beating Will Ospreay for the international title. And somewhere around the evaluation period, he also attempted to take Jack the Jobber's bollocks back to America with him.
Yes.
But was unsuccessful because the man is still here.
But this is just speculation, I may have taken the ring from... No, I didn't. No.
He knew it.
Apparently he still had it in Wales, and that came after the interview with MJF. I was innocent of stealing the ring. Yeah, interesting one for MJF, because it's always strange to see how people rank in the 500 when they've missed quite a lot of action. We talked about Rollins before, but he, despite slowing down on the road to WrestleMania, did stay present on our screens and in storyline and stuff. MJF was gone for a while, yet has still made it to number 7 here. He spent a decent chunk of the period as AEW World Champion, of course, and was having generally very well received matches. The tag stuff with Adam Cole and that storyline got really messy because, as you mentioned, it's hard to book that when Cole is injured, and it led to Cole's eventual betrayal of MJF kind of falling flat, and they've not yet picked that up again. I think it was wise to drop it for now, because it's hard to have a feud over such a long period of time when one of them's injured, so you just can't really, I think it was an impressive year though for MJF, and I do think that this heel turn has given him a boost of momentum, because he's more of a natural heel, isn't he?
Another recent heel turn for AEW is in at number 8.
Jon Moxley, who started the evaluation period beating Orange Cassidy for the international title at All Out, which was I've described as a short but eventful reign with several defenses packed into a month really, before losing to Rey Fenix at Grand Slam. Bit of a surprise result. He then reached the final of AEW's Continental Classic, losing to Eddie Kingston at the last hurdle. He made several appearances in various promotions, New Japan, Ring of Honor, CMLL, often alongside his stablemates in the Blackpool Combat Club. And I've put, he loves a blood sport event still. He won the IWGP title from Naito, as we mentioned, in Chicago, and enjoyed defenses of that against opponents like Powerhouse Hobbs, Shota Umino, and Konosuke Takeshita, before dropping it back to Naito at Forbidden Door. And I didn't realize this. At the time of recording, he hasn't actually wrestled since, but he is about to, surely. Now he's back.
He's forming this new vision for the Blackpool Combat Club with Marina Shafir in the mix, and an awful use of plastic bags as well. I think that there's some great mileage to come from Moxley this year, and I think that considering the stuff that he put in last year and the beginning of this year, I think in that top 10's a nice place to sit.
Moxley's often described as like the glue of AEW, the person they turn to in a crisis when there's an injury or whatever. I think he can also be described, looking at this, as like, outside of WWE, maybe the glue of just world wrestling. He just fills in wherever needed and nearly always delivers.
He just pops up everywhere, from the glue to the General. Gunter, thank you, is at number 9. He spent much of the evaluation period extending his already world record-breaking IC title reign. He had successful defenses over the likes of Drew McIntyre, Chad Gable, Jey Uso, The Miz, finally losing that belt to Sami Zayn at WrestleMania, but bounced back in style, won the King of the Ring with a controversial victory over Randy Orton, earned a world title match in doing so. Now, obviously, the night that he won the world title is outside of the evaluation period for the PWI 500, but even without that monumental world title win, Gunter's had a hell of a run.
Yeah, I think that the only reason Gunter isn't higher is because the IC title's not regarded as a world title, and as we've mentioned, we have to take kayfabe achievements into account. But I'm still very delighted that he made the top 10, because both in terms of his storyline stuff, breaking the record with the IC title and everything, and his matches, he's had an absolutely stellar year. Really in with a shout for wrestler of this whole period. And even though the people we named there weren't all main eventers that he defended the belt against, each title match felt like a world title match, even against someone who we pretty much knew he was going to beat, like The Miz. people were still raising their game to get on Gunther's level and really help him deliver some stellar matches in that time.
Really interesting one, rounds out the top 10.
Mystico from CMLL legend, the shining babyface of the promotion and everything. He won the 2023 Cybernetico for Team Mexico, last eliminating a pair of kind of Japanese veterans in Kushida and Hiromu Takahashi. He also won 2 lesser Cybernetico matches. For those who don't know, it's like a sort of tag team match, but like elimination style-y, and then once one team has won, they all face off against each other. But often, in the case of that first one we mentioned, it's just one guy against multiple opponents, and Mystico pulled out the win. It's a big staple match in CMLL, so I thought it was worth mentioning. He is still the CMLL World Historic Middleweight Champion, a belt he has held for well over 2,000 days, but despite winning it way back in 2018, has only defended 10 times. I've said to be fair, he's wrestled absolutely loads. I think the most out of everybody in this top 10 when I was scanning their cage match profiles. He also made several appearances in MLW in America as well, winning and still holding to this day the MLW middleweight title. Interesting one there from Mystico because he puts in the graft, wrestles absolutely loads, rarely loses because of his position as CMLL's big shining babyface and everything. But with the titles and stuff, it's an odd one. I hope this isn't just PWI thinking, well, CMLL have been picking up steam a lot the past couple of years. We'll throw a CMLL guy in there. I remember in recent times, they put El Hijo del Vikingo in the list. And it was a similar story where like he held these belts and everything, but like rarely defended them. So it's another one where the shadowy criteria of PWI kind of masks a lot of their intent. It's hard to argue with him being in the top 10, but I think maybe I'm relieved that he's not been pushed above some of the names who've held more kayfabe gold than him, I suppose.
Just missing out on that top 10. Samoa Joe at number 11. This is despite a run as world champion in AEW.
Very strange. Sami Zayn at number 12. IC champion, of course, after WrestleMania, and I think that might be a position based on like his performances as well, because he's been very good.
Drew McIntyre hasn't had a lot of gold in his evaluation period, but my days as he found himself in the mix with CM Punk and very much a cornerstone of programming regardless.
Bryan Danielson in at number 14. I suspect by the time this list is released next year, he could well crack the top 10, even if he's retired long before the end of the evaluation period.
Now, if you don't count Will Ospreay, who competed at Turning Point in November for TNA/Impact, Moose at 15 is the highest rated TNA talent. Despite being TNA World Champion, he taps out at 15 this year.
I'm quite surprised because the story, until Scott D'Amore was let go from TNA, the story of that promotion was, for most of this evaluation period, was surely, oh wow, TNA are back. They're picking up steam. They're coming back. They're building these storylines. It's all going well. And Moose was the champion for much of that time. So yeah, I'm surprised that Moose didn't land maybe in the top 10, certainly higher than 15.
I made a note of a couple of noteworthy mentions, honourable mentions in amongst that 500. Just a couple of names to chuck in there as well, including Alex Kane, former MLW champion, getting in there at 25. Which I think might be his highest rating ever. I think he's brilliant, Alex Kane. Excellent work by him. Michael Oku, who had that banger against Will Ospreay. He's in there at 38, former Rev Pro champ. A lot of conversation about what his and Amira's next move is going to be right now, but in this evaluation period, he had a banger. Joe Hendry, 51 this time round.
Sorry, that was rubbish.
That's all right. I genuinely think, based on kind of the summer of Joe Hendry, I feel like if this momentum continues, he's going to be higher next year.
Joe's been kind of screwed a little bit by the timing of the evaluation period. It's sliced his run in half, hasn't it? But hopefully, if he carries on that momentum, he'll shoot up there by this time next year.
Top marks to Max the Impaler, who's the highest rated non-binary pro wrestler. They combined the NWA men's and women's TV championships during this period. And Jessica Troy, the highest rated female performer, the reigning PWA reigning PWA heavyweight champion in Australia, the first woman to do it as well.
Yes, now you might be thinking, well, where are the names like Rhea Ripley, etc., the kind of the higher profile names? Well, I think we've worked out that they take women into account in the PWI 500 if they wrestle against men.
Yes.
And obviously in WWE, the divisions are very separate, so we'll have to wait for the PWI Women's 250, I believe it is, to find out where everybody ranks there.
And there are lots of other women's names that make it in there who have had competitive matches against men men or non-binary performers as well, such as Masha Slamovich is in there as well. Danny Luna from TNA is in there as well. And she's had some bangers. Maki Ito is in there as well because she's had some good...
She's silly.
She's so silly. Emerson Jane's in there as well. The main event Empress had a banger as well. And I want to give some love because every year there's got to be a number 500 in the PWI 500. He's gone and done it. Wrestling Memes, aka Blue Cane, has made it to number 500.
Hooray, Blue Cane.
Oh, I'm so he had a wonderful story with him and Matt Cardona that saw Blue Cane get his WrestleMania moment. He got his most famous rivalry was against WWE's legal firm, which means that we have to call him Blue Pain now, of course. It was unmasked as Memes just a few months ago, and delighted to see Memes creeping in there at number 500. Well done.
Well done, Memes.
Well done, Memes. They count down the colour commentators as well. Want to give those a little nod before we go away.
Yes.
Nigel McGuinness in there at number 1.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. Although I personally maybe prefer number 2, Wade Barrett.
Wade Barrett, I think, has had a sensational year. Caprice Coleman sneaking in at number 3. He's someone who's been part of the ROH broadcast team and other broadcast teams for a long time. So it's nice to see him getting a nod at number 3.
More TNA representation at number 4 with Matthew Raywalt, the former Aiden English.
Matthew's best friend Taz getting in there at number 5, but I digress.
I think underrated possibly Taz there. I think
he's
really
got better.
Good.
He's like a fine wine, like an orange wine. He's got better with age.
Pat McAfee in at number 6, very divisive, but you can't fail but pay attention to him. So I think that's a fair ranking, I suppose.
Booker T,
Oh,
Shucky
yeah,
Ducky, yeah, man.
He should have been 1.
He's turning into Black Snow.
He is from TNA.
He's legit turning into Black Snow.
He is.
He's in there at number 7, much to the behest of Vic Joseph.
Triple A, Hugo Savinovich in at number 8, which is nice to see. I can't pretend that I've listened to much Hugo Savinovich commentary this year, but I assume he's doing very good.
He's still hanging on in there. New Japan and a whole litany of other promotions, including North Wrestling. My broadcast tag team partner Vader Scott in there at number 9. Come on, Vader!
Vader's the workhorse of the colour commentary division.
Oh my days! Vader Scott is sensational. Whenever you put the show on and Vader is on the colour commentary duty, Vader is magnificent. Yes. I am honoured to get to call North Wrestling alongside Vader Scott. Considering we do it over Zoom remotely, we do all right.
You do.
So
you do very well.
Congratulations, Vader, showing them what's what. Nice one, getting in there at number 9.
Number 10, I think an up-and-comer in the colour commentary world, certainly on this level. AEW's Matt Menard, a.k.a. Daddy Magic, who I think has stepped into the role seamlessly. He's kind of made for it.
Oh,
big character.
So much so.
Yeah, very good.
Because he's not in there trying to really get over his own shtick. He's there with his own shtick trying to get everybody else over.
That's a really good way of describing it, yes. I asked Tom off camera, I went, where are you, Tom? And then he corrected me and went, I'm a play-by-play commentator.
Play-by-play guy, mate.
You are, of course.
Don't you worry about it. If there was a play-by-play one, then I'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine.
I'd be interested to see if you would crack the top 10. I hope you would, but I'd be interested to see.
Do you know what? If not, I have a lovely time anyway.
That's fair enough.
Then that is obviously your thoughts, concerns, questions, your comments on the PWI 500. As with any list like this, it's going to invite a whole lot of conversation, a litany of debates on who should go where and where should go why. We invite them down in the comments below. Jack, I've enjoyed this because every year I get to watch you do the PWI 500 stuff, and I always like to join in where I can, so I'm glad that we've got to do this year.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed doing it with you as well. As Tom says, let us know your thoughts and opinions down below, and do be nice to each other.
Do be nice, because you know what? The world's a terrible enough place as it is. Let's try and be a little bit nicer today. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.